Welcome to Struck by Fluency. For those of you that have played through Monster Hunter Rise, what do you remember about Rampages? Because if it's not the Gong of Truth dramatically increasing your damage to goofy numbers and three-shotting monsters, then we weren't playing the same game. Seriously though, a tower defense style mechanic is an interesting choice for a series like Monster Hunter. Dealing with placing down installations of defense while monsters are all around you is such an unpleasant experience. But maybe that's part of the design? Anxiety based on clunking your way through UI and menus to try to interact with this tower defense system? Just to get annoyed and hope the gong is about to get rung so you can just play the dang game? It really isn't a pleasant experience as a player. So let's dive into what Rampages looked like. Rampages involved setting up various defenses, some that were automatic and controlled by NPCs, as well as regular defenses that could be manned by players. Then, waves of monsters would attack your stronghold and you had to hold them off by any means necessary. It feels awkward to engage with because Monster Hunter is a game that is centered around a core gameplay loop, you hunting monsters. There have been sieges and more cinematic fights in this series, but to have an entire section of Monster Hunter Rise dedicated to Rampages and Apex monsters, I don't think it clicked in the way that Capcom wanted it to. Rampages boil down to using ballistas, the Dragonator when you could, wondering if the NPCs around you actually did anything, and doing a lot of monster riding. To put it bluntly, the fun of Rampages did not last long. They were clunky and just felt out of place. Once you got further into the game, Rampage quests devolved into a barrier to what players actually wanted to interact with: the Apex monsters. I'll talk more about those later in the video. The gameplay loop of Rampages is essentially the following. Use ballista or defense options of your choice, attack with your weapon when the Gong of Truth is rung, and wait for the major threat monster to show up. A Rampage led by an Apex monster will instead end with said Apex monster. But this was not well received by the community, and for good reason. Fans of Monster Hunter just want to hunt monsters, and Rampages were a wall that not many players were willing to climb in order to hunt these new Apex monsters. In fact, so much so that in Title Update 2.0, only a month after the game's initial launch on Switch, Capcom decided to allow players to hunt Apex monsters through regular quests. But only 3 of the 5 total Apex monsters at the time were able to be hunted through normal quests: Apex Arzuros, Rathian, and Mizutsune. Apex Rathalos and Diablos were still only found in Rampages. Despite Capcom's willingness to adjust their initial design choice of leaving Apex monsters locked behind Rampages, I think the damage had already been done. Rampages had been written off by most players. And finally, yet another month later, Title Update 3.0 introduced both Apex Zenogre and Crimson Valstrax. Apex Zenogre had both a Rampage and standard quest, and completing Crimson Valstrax's quest and breaking Hunter rank 100 would allow you to hunt the last 2 Apex monsters, Rathalos and Diablos, without needing to step into a Rampage. With Rise and ultimately Sunbreak being developed for the Switch, or at least with the Switch in mind, it makes sense that on a technical level, Rampages just feel bland. Rampages themselves always took place in the same map, the stronghold in Kimura Village. The behavior of monsters within the Rampage was dependent on the type of monster it was. You had flying monsters that attacked from the air, monsters that rushed to the gate you had to defend, and then normal monsters that were more focused on you, preventing you from attacking the other 2 monster types and defending the gates. Rampages are a good idea on paper, but I'm sure having to develop with the Switch in mind gave Capcom challenges and condensed their scope when it came to creating them. But either way, once you've seen 2 or 3 Rampages, you've seen them all. And I don't want to sound unfair here. Rise itself is quite the accomplishment considering it's a game on the Switch and how it was impacted by COVID. The art design of the game is beautifully done and has these gorgeous pops of color compared to World. Puns aside, this aspect of Rise really begins to shine in Sunbreak, and it's impressive how optimized the RE engine has become. Monster Hunter Wilds is also utilizing the RE engine and looks absolutely stunning. Even just the previews and gameplay we can see from Gamescom and PAX West really shows how far the RE engine can be pushed. For example, the Windward Plains is roughly twice the size of Wildspire Waste from World. And although World wasn't made with the RE engine, it makes me think that Rise gave Capcom time to really master it for a bigger project like Wilds. It's just a shame how Rampages kind of flopped, because in my opinion it hurts Rise as a Monster Hunter experience overall. I'm certainly not blaming the developers or Capcom themselves, I just think they took a shot with Rampages and it missed the mark. The saving grace of Rampages were surprisingly Rampage weapons. Now, at first glance, these are indeed quite strong and supply a purpose to engaging with Rampages and hunting apex monsters. They're just incredibly boring and frankly annoying to even deal with because you have to do Rampages. On the plus side, layered weapons were not in the game until Sunbreak, unless you were using a Rampage weapon. Rampage weapons were both upgradable and customizable using materials from Rampages and Apex monsters. Fully upgrading them meant that you were allowed to layer it, applying the appearance of any other weapon you'd like to them. It helps that in base Rise, the Rampage option for most weapon types were either considered the meta or not very far behind it. And we all know that Fashion Hunter is the real endgame anyway. As far as the Apex monsters themselves, it's really a mixed bag. Let's start with what I do like about them. Their designs are well done and very reminiscent of both deviants from GU and the original Apex monsters from 4U. You can't Wyvern ride Apex monsters, which is actually a positive thing in my opinion. It makes the hunt more challenging and you can't rely on the crux that Wyvern riding is. Even with wire bugs and switch skills, taking away Wyvern riding makes the game feel much more grounded in a way that Rise generally is not. That is where the positives end for me though. None of the Apex monsters have any actual armor that you can craft. There's no Apex Rathalos armor, for example. When one of the main aspects of replayability in your game just doesn't apply to certain sections within it, less players are going to want to interact with it. Especially within a series like Monster Hunter, which has such a defined gameplay loop. Hunt monster, make weapons and armor, hunt another monster. It's the same reason why I wasn't a huge fan of the Kolv Taroth or Safi'jiiva weapons in World. RNG being thrown into a gameplay mechanic might make it more replayable, but what's the driving force of that? Monster Hunter fans are used to and choose to accept a certain amount of grind and RNG when it comes to creating new weapons and armor, especially at endgame, but for some reason Kolv Taroth weapons felt grimy to me. It blemished the end of base World and kind of killed my interest in the game at the time. I know that's probably not a popular opinion, as I see a lot of praise for the design of Kolv Taroth, which I do agree with. The fight and arena, the whole sequence is very well done. Safi'jiiva felt like the climax of a specific monster interaction, with it being a matured Xeno'jiiva, and I felt more in control of the RNG weapon system with it. But anyway, that's for another video. Back to Apex monsters. Why hunt a monster if you can't make armor out of it? Sure, you can use Apex materials to craft and upgrade Rampage weapons, but like I said, the designs of these weapons aren't unique and you just slap a layered weapon onto it. Oh, but hey, they created Master Rank versions of Apex monsters in Sunbreak, except there's nothing new about their Master Rank versions. There's no new attacks or moves, no new armor unsurprisingly, and they basically abandoned Rampage weapons with the release of Sunbreak. So what's the point? Master Rank Apex monsters are just a remnant and reminder of a failed aspect of Rise as a base game. And overall, it just makes me miss Deviant monsters from Generations Ultimate. They all had unique armor sets and weapons, on top of a quest structure that progressively increased in difficulty and yielded better rewards. The silver lining here is the fact that Capcom chose to leave Rampages and Apex monsters in Rise, instead of pushing the envelope and continuing to force it upon players, which we could glimpse from the title updates post-launch. And really, shout out to Sunbreak for really pulling Rise out of its pit of Rampages and Apex monsters. I feel the need to say that I think Sunbreak is a phenomenal Monster Hunter experience. It's more arcadey than normal, but the fights in Sunbreak are top-notch with super fun weapon changes to mess around with. Although Rise as a base game was really bland, it acted as a much-needed foundation for Sunbreak. I just have no idea what the new player experience is currently like, but if you still need to do Rampages to progress into Sunbreak, enjoy those Gongs of Truth, because they really were the best aspect about Rampages. I'm sure Wilds is going to have some aspects that aren't going to be liked, but I don't think anything is going to come close to how bad Rampages were. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video and being a part of my journey to Wilds. If you want to experience this journey with me as I create videos about Monster Hunter, feel free to subscribe. And I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.